Guys, tonight we're going to talk about junk miles, call it purpose-driven training in the box. I want to refocus on training in the moment, understand why we're doing what we're doing. There's a phrase in endurance training called junk miles. Now, there are times in endurance training to get volume in and lots of miles to build an aerobic base, but that is a very specific programmed phase in endurance programming. But when we just start running to run miles, just to run miles, and it's independent of any phase of training, regardless of what result we get, then we're logging junk miles. It's fatigue-based training. There's no quality behind it. So enter in CrossFit in our training inside the box. Now, I'm going to provide you 3 examples of junk miles in CrossFit training and some ways to avoid them. The first example is energy pathway training on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I've got my notes down here. I'm not trying to avoid eye contact. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we generally do energy system training, energy pathway training, and the intent of these is to tune your motor, be it the lactic motor or your aerobic base. Now we communicate a level of output in these, like level 3 to 3.5 or so for aerobic training, level 4, 4.5 when we get into our lactic training. And that's to drive you the intent, the levels of output, along with the scaling percentages of loads in those workouts, and our recommendations for those are to drive you in the right direction to get the results from the workout that we wanted. We program a certain type of workout, and we're going to give you tools to achieve the intent of that. An example would be an aerobic base workout. I'm going to put a link to a video, maybe right there. Watch this video. This is of OPT athletes doing an aerobic-based training workout. Now, aerobic-based training workouts, when we do like those 3 to 5 minute AMRAPs with a little bit of rest between, like 2 to 3 minute rest between each AMRAP, but we're telling you to go at like a level 3 output. It's steady, it's calm, there's no duress, you don't have to pause in the middle of the workout. Watch these athletes in this video work. They're doing 7-minute AMRAPs with 3-minute rest between. This is only about a 2-minute clip of it, but get the overwhelming sense of calm in the gym. It's steady. There's controlled breathing. You don't hear screaming. You don't hear weights banging. It's just this constant, smooth, steady, great example of what level 3, 3.5 aerobic base output is. So junk miles for an aerobic base work would be going level 4, 4.5, hitting a breathing threshold, a lactic threshold, or loading too heavy or not scaling appropriately in the movements we're prescribing. So you have to stop based on the load. It's too heavy for you, so you break your workout up and you're inputting rest in the middle of an aerobic cycle. That would be like me saying, hey, we're going to go run 1 mile repeats for aerobic training. I only want you to go at 80% of your best ability. But you go too fast, you sprint the first 400 meters, and now you have to stop and rest for 30 seconds before you go run the rest of the mile. You've broken up the intent of that training. You've changed it from a 1 mile aerobic repeat into a 400 meter lactic sprint, and then recover, and then trash whatever the last portion of the mile, last 3 laps are. So all the aerobic-based training is that we're doing is just like going out and running 7-minute repeats with 3 minutes rest between each one at a very dialed back pace, except in CrossFit, we're going to throw in kettlebell swings and box jumps and double unders and burpees and power cleans at that controlled output level because it's CrossFit and we train that way. Example 2 is a lifting workout. During our deload weeks, after a 3-week lifting cycle, we program in an exposure to the next lifting cycle's lifts, but we do those in sets of 2 reps or 3 reps with about a minute and 90 seconds rest between, but we cap the lift at 50 to 60% of your 1 rep max. The intent behind that, our purpose-driven lift programming, is to reinforce safe but also efficient execution of those movements. We want the appropriate movement patterns, reinforce the right movement pattern at a light load, so when we go into our lifting cycle for the next month, we already have a baseline exposure and our body is neurologically primed to do the right thing. As opposed to junk miles with lifting work in our deload week would be load up too heavy to where you cannot get the appropriate form. So now you are logging neurological junk miles in your lifting form. So stick to the prescribed load there. In example 3, I'll reference you to this new video up here from KStar. He has a different video where he talks about double unders and box jumps in his box, and provides a potentially controversial recommendation at the end, which I'll talk about here in a second. But there's no arguing the points here that in a CrossFit box, the healthy competitive environment is fostered by keeping score, and we log reps and put them up on the board. And in competition, or even in day-to-day, we don't count reps that don't meet the full range of motion. Why? Because we're trying to do a certain amount of work in a certain amount of time, and it's competitive, and we only count the valid reps. Well, so KStars recommendation is that you don't count reps that have improper movement patterns or unsafe movement patterns. So if you constantly have a bad movement pattern, such as your knees collapse or they touch each other when you jump or land in a box jump, or in this video you watch the double unders, you always have a bent knee, bent torso, neck forward, rolled shoulder, double under, and you're always doing them that way in workouts and in practice, and those reps are counting for you, then there's no reinforcement to get you steered towards the correct way, towards the correct movement pattern, the efficient movement pattern, things that won't foster injury. So your kettlebell swing always has bent elbows at the top of your kettlebell swing. You're logging junk miles, junk reps in your workouts. So in theory, if you now take away those reps that don't follow a safe movement pattern, even if they're in the full range of motion, then there's incentive now to fix that movement pattern. Every rep not only has to be legit in range of motion, but it has to be legit in execution. All right, so you fix the neurological cueing and the movement pattern in execution with some incentive and motivation in the scoring. Bottom line, CrossFit Hampton Roads programming is purpose-driven. It's driven to get you to look, feel, and perform better. Make your execution of our programming as purpose-driven as the programming is. No more junk miles, no more junk reps in the box. See you in the box.